Still on climate change, there was an astonishing development regarding media treatment of the issues last week, showing yet again how illiberal the forces are in this debate, how the alarmist view is constantly trying to silence scepticism. The Conversation website is closely associated with our universities. It was established with government money and has continuing support from taxpayers through our universities. It seeks to be a clearinghouse, if you like, for public debate. It aspires to host a more intelligent and academically inclined debate than what you get in the rest of the media. It's always shown the green left bias that sadly we've come to expect from such a publication. But last week it announced a clampdown, not only on people who might argue against the consensus on human-induced climate change, but also on people who are merely sceptical about it. Climate change deniers and those shamelessly peddling pseudoscience and misinformation are perpetuating ideas that will ultimately destroy the planet, said its explanation. That's why the editorial team in Australia is implementing a zero-tolerance approach to moderating climate change deniers and sceptics. Not only will we be removing their comments, we'll be locking their accounts. This is extraordinary stuff for a site that runs on it tends to run, apart from factual analysis, it runs all kinds of emotive and alarmist climate articles from people like Tim Flannery. And for an academic site to reject scepticism when the very foundation of the scientific method is built on rigorous scepticism seems absurd, closed-minded and even dangerous. Earlier today I caught up with the Conversation's editor, Misha Ketchel. Misha, thanks for joining us. You're saying that the Conversation won't publish deniers, climate change deniers. Who decides who's a denier and who's not?
That's a good question. So what we have is a policy where we look at comments that come from a small group of people who consistently comment on issues relating to climate science. So it's people who sort of repeat the same particular memes and comment on the same topic pretty much every time. They're sort of the two key criteria.
I noticed in your announcement you talked about not publishing sceptics either. Now, when it comes to scientific endeavour and, in fact, the scientific method, it's actually founded on rigorous scepticism. How can you have an intelligent climate change debate without scepticism?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. You need scepticism, and it's important that there continue to be a scientific debate amongst those who are experts in this field that shows a degree of scepticism. And there are lots of areas around which there is legitimately debate. What we're trying to do is weed out the people who consistently comment over and over again, often using discredited science or discredited arguments to try to attack the idea that there's a strong scientific consensus on climate change.
But science is not about consensus. Science is about hypotheses and testing those with rigorous scepticism. It's about having the contest over these issues. Surely, as an academic journal, you ought to be welcoming this debate rather than shutting it down.
Well, we are, insofar as it's occurring amongst scientists who have got expertise in the field, but debate's also about facts, and the fact is there is a very strong consensus amongst climate scientists, and people who misrepresent that consensus or attempt to tear it down, they've got a place too, but what's happening is they are trolling aggressively. They're commenting on every single article, they're rehashing the same arguments over and over again. And we think it's time, in fairness to our readers and our audience, just to move them on and move the debate on a little bit.
Well, we all know the issues with commenters when it comes to online publications, but it's really about the articles you publish as well and the breadth of opinion and fact and debate that you host there. And you don't seem to have any trouble publishing people like Professor Tim Flannery, who's of course not a climate scientist but seems to make a lot of his mark in that area. He's made a lot of outlandish predictions that haven't come true. I just noticed on your site today you've published him in the last few days and he's talking about terrifying megafires. I mean, this is not a bloke sticking to the facts. This is a bloke publishing alarmist rhetoric and hyperbole.
I'm not sure that's true. I mean, that claim about terrifying megafires is based again on peer-reviewed science, which is predicting that they are some of the potential outcomes of...
Well, no, he's talking about the here and now. He says, in this age of melting glaciers and terrifying megafires, I mean, we've always had extremely dangerous bushfires, and there's no evidence at all that they have morphed in this country or any other into terrifying megafires. Where's the science in that?
I'm not sure. Maybe you're splitting hairs there. I mean, it seems to me that a bushfire can reasonably be described as a terrifying megafire, depending on its magnitude, and we certainly have had some very serious and large bushfires. So,
but this is my point. This is my point. You seem to allow this alarmist rhetoric and hyperbole on that side of the debate to talking about issues, natural disasters that we've always dealt with and always will have to deal with.
I'm not sure it's necessarily fair to describe it as hyperbole. I think, anybody who's experienced bushfires, the severe bushfires that we experience in Australia, for example, would describe them as terrifying, and I think they're reasonably described as megafires. So I'm not sure there's a problem there.
Well, there is a problem because he's not talking about the bushfires we've had in the past or the bushfires that we've become that have done so much damage to us in the recent past and in the distant past. He's using terrifying megafire as a way of talking about the impact of climate change.
Which, again, as I understand it, is a reasonable thing to do, given pretty much all of the scientists agree that global warming is going to increase the intensity and frequency of weather events. Now, is any individual weather event fully explained by climate change? No, it's not. There are lots of things that happen naturally, as a result of natural cycles, but there does seem to be strong evidence that global warming will increase the frequency and intensity of such events.
But my point here is that you're trying to tidy up the debate, if you like. You want to shut down deniers and even sceptics, and I would contend that that's a very dangerous practice anyway, to be shaping the debate in that form. But the obvious point is that you're not doing anything to tidy up the debate to make it more credible on the alarmist side. Surely if you're going to have a sensible, science-based debate, you have to get rid of this hyperbolic rhetoric around climate. In fact, in your own note describing your new policy on this, you said that we were going to destroy the planet. I mean, that again is an incredibly emotive, unscientific term. Nobody seriously contends that we're about to destroy the planet over the next 100 years.
Sure, and they were my words. They weren't the words of a scientist writing, based on peer-reviewed research, and that was really based on the evidence that we have, which is that there are going to be serious consequences if we're above 2 or 3 degrees of global warming. So,
yes, serious consequences is a big leap to destroying the planet.
Well, when you say destroy, the word destroy doesn't necessarily mean, annihilate, as in the planet doesn't exist. What we're talking about...
Yeah, what does it mean, though?
Destroy the planet as we know it. I mean, you can sort of split hairs on it, but it's...
Well, exactly.
Saying,
look, just one other thing, Misha, on that. For instance, when you come to the debate about the temperature record as well as forecasts, for instance, there is a very... fascinating fact-based debate about the homogenisation of temperature records. For instance, the fact that in Australia the Bureau of Meteorology doesn't count any of the temperature records before 1910, so it sort of rules out of the equation the very hot, dry decade of the 1890s and the Federation drought. So there's a very fact-based debate around temperature homogenisation. Is that something that the Conversation, for instance, is willing to host on its website?
If there were points being made by peer-reviewed scientists who had expertise in this area, then yes, we would certainly run those issues. I'm not aware of the extent to which that debate has been resolved, or really, I don't fully understand its significance.
Well, it's quite crucial, isn't it? Because the significance is, as we read every day, there's temperature records being broken. There's actually empirical records recorded at the time that are often higher than the records we now are saying are broken. So it's quite critical, if we're going to keep talking about the hottest ever year and the hottest ever day, that we're actually level with the public and say, actually, hotter temperatures have been recorded. It's just that we've adjusted them downwards.
Yes, well, I mean, to me, that sounds like a conspiracy theory.
No, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's just a fact. And shouldn't people deal with the facts? I mean, I've detailed this, obviously, from the public record. The Bureau of Meteorology doesn't dispute it. They just argue that their homogenisation, their adjustment downwards of these records is scientifically justifiable. Other experts disagree with that.
OK. Well, I mean, I'd go with the Bureau of Meteorology, but it sounds like a topic that's being hotly debated.
All right, then. Well, thanks for your time, Misha. I appreciate you discussing this, and I hope, in the interests of fair and accurate debate on these issues, you introduce your new policy with a lot of leeway.
Great. Thanks, Chris.